Mission Impossible came out in 1996. This was directed by Brian De Palma and the first film in what is to become one of the most iconic movie franchises of all time. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to be reviewing every single Mission Impossible movie leading up to the release of The Final Reckoning next month. Now, I'm sure some of you are already skeptical as to whether or not I can actually do this thing, because every time I say I'm going to review a specific franchise or a movie series, I usually get lazy and never finish one. But that won't be the case with Mission Impossible, I think. I'm genuinely excited to talk about every single one of these movies, so let's get started. Now, for a very long time, this was my least favorite film in the franchise. The first time I saw this, I was probably 15 or 16, and by that point, I had already seen the second and the third one. I went to see Mission Impossible 3 in a theater with my dad, but for whatever reason, I didn't check out the first one until in my mid-teens. And at the time, compared to the two sequels, this one felt a little less exciting. You know, it wasn't heavy on the action. It felt more like a murder mystery, a film noir than an action adventure. And the film's retro, old-timey feel, teenage Hito saw that and found it off-putting. But once I started taking film classes in college and started learning about genre filmmaking and who Brian De Palma is, I started to have more appreciation for this movie. And now I'm a big fan of the original Mission Impossible. And one of the reasons for it is that this is essentially a big budget Brian De Palma movie. Now, for those of you who don't know, Brian De Palma is the guy who made films like Carrie, Scarface, Blowout, The Untouchables, a couple of cool but problematic erotic thrillers. His movies have a distinct visual style. And even though this is a huge blockbuster based on a, much beloved, recognizable IP and has a huge movie star as the lead, you can see De Palma's fingerprints all over it. There's heavy use of Dutch angles, POVs, voyeuristic shots, long continuous shots, split screens, striking emphasis on color red, and there is weird sexual energy between a man and a woman. Like this scene in particular, it feels like Ethan is about to sexually assault this woman, which doesn't happen, thank God, but the way it's lit and shot gives off this really icky vibe. Looking at how this franchise evolved over the last 3 decades, this movie feels radically different, and I mean that as a compliment. I especially like the segment in Prague. This whole section looks exquisite. The lighting, the cinematography, the way they lit the city of Prague is just beautiful. Another thing I like about this film is that Ethan Hunt feels like a regular person who happens to be an exceptional spy. You know, in the subsequent sequels, he became more of a superhero, he doesn't really die, and some movies make fun of the fact that he doesn't really die, but in this movie, he feels like an ordinary person. And while not as big or over the top as some of the action sequences in the later Mission Impossible movies, every action sequence in this is thrilling. The scene where Ethan breaks into the CIA vault is masterfully crafted. The editing is superb. The way it builds on suspense and cuts back and forth between Ethan trying to download the knock list and Jean Reno's character holding the rope while trying his hardest not to sneeze, and a CIA agent trying to come back from the bathroom. It's tense, it's gripping, it's beautiful filmmaking. Now, I do have some issues with the film. I think the plot is needlessly complicated, and you can say that about pretty much every Mission Impossible movie. I'm also not sure what exactly Jim and Claire Phelps were trying to achieve here. I guess they just wanted a lot of money, but that's not a very compelling motive. But overall, the original Mission Impossible from 1996 is so much fun. Like I said, it feels radically different from all the sequels that came after it. It was directed by a filmmaker with a distinct visual style, and even though this was made almost 30 years ago, so much of it still holds up. Thanks for watching, and I will be back with a review of Mission Impossible 2. And boy, I have so much to say about that movie. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.